Okay, so thanks for coming, everybody. Welcome to the celebratory IKON reading on Zoom. And I want to thank Susan Sherman, who had the idea for this event. And graciously, I'm humbled and honored to host as Jules Poetry Playhouse for hosting this event. Jules Poetry Playhouse is located in Placitas, New Mexico. We're just north of Albuquerque and about 40 miles south of Santa Fe. So we do writing retreats, and a lot of it is all online at this point. And we also have books. And so you can also check out our website later at poetryplayhouse.com. We're also going to be sharing the link to the archives of IKON. So IKON was the magazine that Susan started, and we are the archivist for the second series from 1982 to 1994. And it was a major feminist publication, both historical and timeless. It was comprised of artists, writers, activists, organization whose work would come to define a pivotal era in women's history. We had voices from New York to New Mexico to Nicaragua. They are voices of rebels, witnesses, and lovers, all rooted in a desire for justice. And some of you I know have been published in IKON as well. So I want to thank Susan for really introducing me to this. And the archive of the second series is now available online. Thanks to support from World Literature Today, and includes an online commemorative issue done originally with the Society for Educating Women, or SO, and that comprises work from the original issues as well as new work. So I'm going to be posting that link, and then we are going to be reading in alphabetical order today as well. And I'm also going to put it over to Susan next, who is going to briefly introduce IKON, and then we'll go ahead and start the reading. So our reading order, alphabetical, will be starting with Demetria Martinez, myself, Mary Oishi, Margaret Randall, and Susan Sherman. And then we will have a short Q&A session after that, so feel free to stay for that as well. So Susan, thanks for...
So I can come on. A very short introduction, because there's nothing worse than introductions that are longer than the program itself. But I just wanted to say a few words about the magazine, and also really to thank everybody that is involved in the event today. From my dearest years known friend, Margaret Randall, to new friends like Jules, and medium friends like Mary, and Demetria in particular with this event, because she really helped get it together, and also was the special guest editor on the little commemorative issue that we did that's going to be online. So thanks to Demetria for all, and was really responsible for getting it online. So thanks, Demetria, and everybody. And IKON, why IKON? Why the word IKON? Well, first of all, we named the magazine IKON before there was any such thing as the little icons on the computers, because the first issue came out in the first series in 1967, before our little computer, Macs, anything. And what the IKON to us stood for was not the religious Russian icons, which is what people usually identify the word icon with, but the fact that if you took a picture and all the little symbols in it, what they represent, you don't see them linearly, one by one. You take everything in at the same time. Everything is dependent on everything else. Everything is interdependent. And we saw that as a symbol of the interdependency of art and social change, the fact that artists could write about their own work and other people's work without an intercession from somebody else. So it was really about this interdependency and this linking. The magazine first series stopped in 1969. And then I restarted it again in 1985 as a feminist magazine. We did that magazine in coordination with some other wonderful groups. Art Against Apartheid. There was an Asian Women's United issue. There was Coast to Coast National Women of Color anthology. It's really a wonderful
No,
series.
my choice probably better than
And there we got rid of him. There was there were wonderful collaborative issues. There were issues that, I mean, you really need to go online and see them. They're in full online. You can see the full issues of the magazines. So again, thank everybody responsible for this, and I'm throwing it back to Jules to host. And Jules, thank you so much for hosting this and introducing the poets and blah blah. Okay, it's all yours.
Okay, so I'm gonna, our first reader is Demetria Martinez. So I'm gonna put Demetria on here on the spotlight. Demetria is probably known to most of you. She's a poet, writer, and activist. She's in La Cienega, New Mexico, which is just outside of Santa Fe. And I'm keeping introductions short. I will post things in chat, and we have them on the website as well. So Demetria, I want to make sure you're unmuted, which I make sure you're unmuted. You want to unmute yourself, and then we'll have you start with your reading.
How's that?
Perfect.
Great. Okay, I'm going to start with a little bit of humor that may not be quite so funny in this day and age, but it's called for English Press 1, a true story. You have reached blank. If this is a medical emergency, please hang up and dial 911. To continue this call in English, please press 1. Para español, oprime el 9. Please listen carefully as our menu options have recently changed. If you need to cancel or schedule an appointment, press 1 now. If you are sick and need to speak with a nurse, press 3. We're sorry, we did not understand that. If you need to cancel or schedule an appointment, press 1. If you are sick and need to speak with a nurse, press 3. We're sorry, we did not understand that. For billing, press 2. We're sorry, all of our representatives are currently busy or with other customers. If you know the extension of the party you are trying to reach, please press 1 now. Otherwise, press 2. You have reached billing. Due to the high volume of calls we are experiencing, we ask that you leave your number after the tone, and one of our representatives will be with you shortly. If you have reached this number in error, please press 1 to return to the main menu. We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected. Please hang up and dial again. What to do if you can't afford a doctor? Above all, think positive thoughts. They say it will add years to your life. Above all, laugh a lot. A study showed it might cure your cancer. Above all, practice meditation. It's free, and all you need do is observe your pain in a detached fashion. Above all, visualize. Picture good little white cells gobbling up bad little brown cells. Above all, take vitamins and minerals, herbal tea and leafy greens. Avoid caffeine, dairy, gluten. Try downward facing dog. Above all, make lists. Make a list of your goals. Make a list of things you're grateful for. Make a list of things you need to make lists of. Above all, remember, early to bed, early to rise. God helps those who help themselves. What goes around comes around. Above all, don't stress. Draw a smiley and tape it to the refrigerator. Write breathe and tape it to the bathroom mirror. Write think positive thoughts and tape it to the front door. So you can't afford a doctor? Just be sure to put your affairs in order and don't worry about a thing. Healthcare reform. Pray to end the healthcare system as we know it. Write a little something every day to dull the pain. 2. Remember Maria. Remember how she walked across the Rio Grande. Remember how she flashed her passport with a photo of Our Lady of Guadalupe at the guards. Remember how she waved a broom like a wand at work, wielded rags and buckets until the house shone. There are thousands of Marias with dark eyes that look at you. Don't turn away or you'll miss a miracle, a story of a nation being born beneath the North Star. Borders. Borders are wounds stitched up with barbed wire and children's entrails. Borders are giant minus signs subtracting whole populations. Borders are the gleam in tyrants' eyes, a wet dream. Borders are the stuff of poetry, the root of angst. Someday borders will be no more because too many people died crossing, because still more people survived. Walls will come tumbling down. Monarch butterflies and children will dance among the ruins. Fields of sunflowers will spring up over graves of the fallen. Their names, Maria, Jose, Jesus, will be inscribed in a new poetry that will not let us forget. Dreamers talk back to immigration agents. Because you cannot detain clouds and clamoring rain. Because you cannot detain a blizzard of apple blossoms. Because you cannot detain the scent of honeysuckles or a dove's coo. Love too evades your searchlight. Love flits like a butterfly from sky to sky. Because you cannot detain a dream, we are your worst nightmares. Consuelo. Consuelo, now Connie. Like having her hair cut too short. Easy to pronounce, her kindergarten teacher said. It will take years for Connie to grow her name back, to look in the mirror and love what she sees. On a table in the waiting room, a Vogue magazine. The model no longer smiles at me. She glares. Despite decades of face creams, sunscreens, crow's feet ring my eyes, brown flecks spot my cheeks. Despite decades of advertisements, I am not young. I am not white. It makes me sad. I no longer know how to pray. So I order a kit. Dad spits in a vial up to the fill line. In 8 weeks, we will have a DNA map to learn still more of origins, migrations, before borders, dogs, guards, the long journeys of ancestors who knew how to pray, who knew how to pray their way north. So much depends on an accent mark. Our name was Martin until great-grandpa Trinidad changed it to Martinez so that no one would call us Martin. I may be the only cousin who strikes the eye with a lightning bolt. I stand in that light and am seen. Hope, in memory of Paul Rudd. Sometimes the pain is so great that the word hope must be buried like a dog's bone. So for now, I offer these words from my land: cottonwood, parsley, fig, dandelion, pink cosmos. I offer the howl of coyotes, the aroma of a bonfire, and 2 blue eggs from the chicken coop. Sometimes the pain is so great that the word hope must be buried like a dog's bone. Therapy. We meet in your backyard in the shade of a cottonwood. I speak of my pain, of a body I do not care for, hair growing gray, sagging breasts. But then a butterfly with black and yellow wings lands inside the mouth of a tiger lily. I stop, draw a deep breath, while you aim your camera, take a picture, and I forget my pain, glimpsing heaven. May 13th, 2022. And this starts with a quote from Kate Peck, the poet laureate of Las Vegas, New Mexico. Memories don't burn. Flames eat house after house. Weeds tumble across the roads as cars snake south from Espanola. What would I pack if it were me? Grandpa's poems, grandma's doilies, or terrified, would I up and flee with every memory I could fit in a red truck with 3 dogs and the woman I love? Yesterday. Yesterday, God was everywhere. In the okra you planted, the squash, beets, chives, cosmos, morning glories. You dug into the earth with your fingers that earlier in the day traced my furrows, my lips. We waited a long time to plant, but then it rained all night. Wet kisses on the breast of the earth. Time. Like God, the rooster crows at all the wrong times, trying to wake me up. Some days I hear, some days I don't. When I don't, the darkness hovers, and I am searching, seeking to become one with the light once again. And I'll end with Ars Poetica at age 61. Hurry, gather what you can in your green spiral notebook. The mountains are scarved in smoke, bloodied with flames. You don't have the time you once did, and a sorrow no pill can heal draws tears that would restore the earth if they could fall from the sky. Hurry, gather what you can in your green spiral notebook.
Thank you, Demetria.
Thanks, Jules.
Oh, that is so good. Thank you. So I'm up next for reading, and I'm going to read 3 poems. And these are the ones that are in the IKON online magazine. So this first poem is called Her. And it's in respect to Anne Sexton's Her Kind. I have dressed up in the desert, high heels sinking into sand, fabric billowing, home sewn inserts catching on yucca blades gone mad, radioactive mountains purr. This woman thing is not a fad. I have been her. I have been the other woman, a white praying mantis on your back. In August, the turtles were my totems, broken hopes, at home stroking my cats. I sit in my car, a voyager, a woman like that has ice in her hair. I have been her. I have gone out alone, rising with the roosters, a crow, my strong tongue sings with the bones. I'm with you, sisters. I know that taste of blood in my mouth. No amateurs, my mother and my sister-in-law falling from vertigo. I speak with the dead. I have been her. And this second poem is a pandemic poem, a little bit of coming out of isolation. It's called Twilight Hour. And I wrote it in July of 2021. And there's a local band here in Albuquerque called Bebe La La. And one of my friends is in that band, and another band called Jaded Hearts. And they were playing at a Albuquerque outdoor concert area called Casa Flamenco. And a lot of places at that time were especially building outdoor patios so we could be outside. So Twilight Hour. It was defiant, that first act, the act of getting there. We noticed the spaced apart polka dot chairs. Flesh overwhelms us, the thought of what to wear. The act of getting there, we clutch our mass. Flesh overwhelms us, the thought of what to wear. I stare at her dress. We clutch our mass, the woman who flaunts her cleavage. I stare at her dress. The band sings, Don't Run Away. The woman who flaunts her cleavage, where were we when it all shut down? The band sings, Don't Run Away. We carefully choose something to adorn our soft bodies. Where were we when it all shut down? We're here now, changed. We carefully chose something to adorn our soft bodies. A spider clings to the metal mic. We're here now, changed. We noticed the spaced apart polka dot chairs. Are we all that spider clinging? It was defiant, that first act. That was a pantoum. So my final poem is a sestina, and I like to write in form, especially sestinas. So if you're not familiar with that, the form repeats. So there's 6 stanzas that repeat the last 6 words. So you're gonna hear some repetition. So this is called Oscillation. And I have an epigraph quote from Karl Marx that reads, all that is solid melts into air. What is heavy stays put as a fluctuating earth, undergoes a suspension of national borders to change a yellow letter into a porous light online, a cardboard box of space. Antiquated postage stamps disappear into the space of a digital divide, hardwired into a heavy minority status, brought to light with a planet-wide pandemic unearthing an ephemeral call to change, a weightless movement of diversity and inclusion, striving for full participation while billionaires travel privately into space, out of touch with change. Faded Post-it notes are heavy with tasks here on Earth, cubicles filled with fluorescent lights, humans caressing their iPhone glass, a light transmitting eternal conversations, wrapping webs of energy around the Earth, Google word clouds suspended in space, working from home to avoid heavy traffic and mandated in-office change. A tender touch can change a life. A candle in a power outage lights a feeling of reflection. Pauses heavy, resistance to discuss differing opinions, more time to sit under trees on Earth's dirt, a forest floor of bark and needles at the hearth. A comforting touch can change the narrow garden space of a city apartment from artificial light to a metamorphosis of healing function. A tactile encounter weighs heavy. A moonlight falls heavy through a clerestory window. A celestial body dances in the space of that cutout paper earth, exchanged for a cardboard box in motion. Okay. So thank you. And now back to my hosting duties here. So let's see, after me, we have Mary Oishi. And Mary lives in Albuquerque. And Mary is one of our former poet laureates. And she did a wonderful job during the pandemic of doing readings at libraries and doing things outside and recording things. So Mary, I've just got to find you and get you up here. Here you go. Let's see. So, so welcome. Now we have Mary Oishi.
Thank you so much, Jules.
Mary,
I'm so honored to be here and part of this. So
okay.
thank everyone. Are you hearing me?
You went out, now you're back. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, now you're good.
All right. I said, thank you so much, Jules, and I'm so honored to be here as part of this reading. This was the poem that was in IKON. Broken frame. 3 children clutch their pregnant mother's skirt. This time the explosions, not fireworks, landing oh so close. Boom, boom, boom. How can she protect? Where can they run? In danger, fire, fresh corpse, rubble streets. Boom, boom. If a bomb falls here, will below ground be a furnace or a fallen beam trap with none to rescue from the horror, from the pain, the stench of burning flesh. This poem is a graphic picture on a sign in front of every senator, every candidate who calls for escalation, for tough measures. This is a pro-life poem. This is a pro-life poem. He hasn't yet said his first word, just a few coups, but today his eyes are scanning his mother's face. He sees something's wrong. He doesn't know she chose to end her last pregnancy to her stepmother's older brother. She just couldn't bear her daddy being grandpa and uncle both. She was a teenager trying to get to know his new wife's family, but it all went too far, too fast. Alone in the house, the flattery, the alcohol, her desire to be a part of things. She had an escort, a compassionate, courageous woman to walk her to the clinic. She wished she didn't have to make that choice, but she knew it was the right one. She always knew if she ever conceived in love, she would gladly have the child, and she loves this baby's daddy like life itself. She loves the little miracle looking up at her with intent brown eyes, Jules amid the rich chocolate of his skin. She loves him more than she can ever tell. She wants him to grab life, stand tall, be a good man, maybe be president someday. But this day she thinks Skittles and iced tea. She thinks hoodies. She thinks walking down the street a few days before college. She thinks 4 hours in his own blood. She thinks, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. She thinks of public calls for assassination, images of lynchings in effigy. She thinks of 21st century James Crow Jr. in his suit and tie on a mission to end voter fraud. She thinks court-ordered end to affirmative action, to voting rights, charges of reverse racism. With no friends in high places, she wonders how he will ever get his foot in the door, even with shoes high-shined, head full of learning. She wonders if her pro-choice sisters will stand with her now that she's made this choice. Will they demand her chosen child have a chance to get through, that he and she have choices matching theirs? This poem is a pro-choice rally in the face of militarized police, by the gates of private prisons, by the broken glass of underfunded schools, by the precincts with single voting machines, long lines, also by the manicured lawns, up the circular driveways of those who claim not to see color, whose responsibility ended when they voted for a Black man, who are so glad to live in a post-racial world. This poem demands all women's right to choose, all women, to really have choices, opportunity. This is a pro-choice poem. This is a pro-choice poem. This is a pro-life, pro-choice poem looking for a new frame. Next one is for Wanda Cooper Jones. And if you don't know who that is, she is the mother of Ahmaud Arbery, who was murdered by those 3 men. For Wanda Cooper Jones, this is a tanka, which I've been writing a lot of the last year.
Mary, your
Mother who never wanted this. Is it cutting
Oh.
out again?
yeah, just cut out. Can you start the poem over? Great. Thanks.
Sure. For Wanda Cooper Jones. Mother who never wanted this mountain to climb, holds the scene of him first time in her arms and climbs until Merrick Garland cries. This is Witness for Christine for Eric. I tried to yell for help. When I did, Brett put his hand over my mouth to stop me from screaming. I can't breathe. It was hard for me to breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I thought that Brett was accidentally going to kill me. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I tried to yell for help. Can't breathe. I can't breathe. His hand over my mouth to stop me. I can't breathe. It was hard for me to breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. This is what terrified me the most. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I thought he was accidentally going to kill me. I can't breathe. I can't. A song called Low Spark of High Heel Boys. So this flips that. It's High Spark of Low Heeled. There she is on the corner of Broadway and Lomas dancing, wrapping her arms around herself, throwing them open to the sky, shouting commands to the drivers, waiting for the light to change. Grand sweeping motions for them to go, go. Back to dancing, wrapping her arms around herself, throwing them open to the sky, singing out the descriptors of her jumbled world to the indifferent day. She's out of her mind, they think. A fleeting dismissal, green light, and they roll past, glad their doors auto-lock. I miss the first light. She makes no eye contact, calls instead to the drifting cloud that pays no mind on its way to the mountain. What trauma put her there, incoherent on the corner? What horrors made her hold herself abandoned, hold herself abandoned, spinning out back in like that? What? Every birthing mother rides with death for a while, some for a few minutes, some hours, some days, some all the way past the point where they can wrap new life in their arms, leap from his chariot, or even themselves dismount alone? Who dares to force her stay aboard, no matter how child she is, how old, no matter how she got there, father, grandpa, violent stranger, even if it's guaranteed he'll drive her past the veil? This one I wrote for the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. It's called Democracy's Angels. And I thought it was appropriate to read today as we are in such proximity to the next election. Abigail Adams said, "Remember the ladies," but they only remembered white landowning men. For Abigail Adams, I vote. Sojourner Truth asked, "Am I not a woman?" to the Women's Convention in Akron, Ohio. The year was 1881. For Sojourner Truth, I vote. Victoria Woodhull ran for president 48 years before most women were able to mark her name. For Victoria Woodhull, I vote. Susan B. Anthony, arrested for voting, refused to pay the fine. Champion of abolition, then women's suffrage, selfless, the first woman on a coin. For Susan B. Anthony, I vote. Ida B. Wells, journalist, used the power of her words, refused to go to the back to appease the Southern contingent in the women's suffrage march. Instead, she held her head high, brought her sisters to the front of the fight. For Ida B. Wells, I vote. Alice Paul sent a parade down Pennsylvania Avenue. "Mr. President, how long must women wait for liberty?" Picketer, civil disobedient, political prisoner on a hunger strike, force-fed raw eggs through a feeding tube, too radical for some, but her treatment in prison woke up the nation. The 19th Amendment was finally passed. For Alice Paul, I vote. Fannie Lou Hamer, organizer of Mississippi's Freedom Summer, speech so compelling LBJ called a press conference to preempt it. Threatened and shot at while trying to vote, arrested while trying to register more, beaten so badly in prison it sent Fannie Lou to an early grave. "This is what happens in what we call America," she said, with the sadness of a loving wife betrayed. For Fannie Lou Hamer, I vote. Shirley Chisholm, first Black woman to run for president. "If they don't give you a seat at the table," she said, "bring a folding chair." For Shirley Chisholm, I vote. Multitudes unknown to history who marched and bled, and some of them died. Though their names are all gone, their courage survives them. What they fought for lives on. And my last poem will be feminist. Oh, my internet connection's unstable. All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So this last one is a feminist anthem that I wrote quite a long time ago. And I read it the day after the unthinkable inauguration here in Albuquerque's Women's March. Women, when we rise. Women, when we rise heaving, panting, pushing, screaming like Big Bang birthing when we rise. Women, when we rise against pain, through pain, through pain, through more pain than one body can stand, it seems. Women, when we rise, it's never just one resurrection, it's always bringing more life with it, pulling the whole underworld along its bursting tombs into seedlings and springtime, and singing tomorrows when we rise. Women, when we rise, truth mountains shadow darkened for centuries, burst watermelon and high-lit ribs, plain as day for 100 miles when we rise. Women, when we rise, secrets cry out from crevices, sulfured springs transform to sparkling. What once was poison now is fuel for still more rising when we rise. Women, when we rise, there is no wind can take us down, tethered as we are to moon and mystery. Women, when we rise, all else is trifled, all the foulest deeds of greed and war, all fears that spawn them gone when women find their power. Women, when we rise together, out of bones unnamed and cries forgotten, bonded to ourselves like witch to stake, like slave to chain, like Hiroshima vapor to the stone, like Juarez blood to desert sand. But when we rise, we bring them every soul from the first mother forward, and goddess breath will roar from us forever when we rise. Women, when we rise, we must not, cannot, will not be put down again. When women rise, when women rise. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. And that was wonderful. And everybody, please remember to vote for elections coming up. And next we have Margaret Randall reading. Margaret needs no introduction, but Margaret is joining us from Albuquerque, and she's a poet, essayist, historian, translator, photographer, activist, and many of you know her long history. So Margaret, I'm going to put you in the spotlight, and thanks, welcome.
Thank you, Jules. I want to thank your Poetry Playhouse for including me in this reading. It's always fun to read with old friends who are also powerful poets. And I want to give a special shout out to IKON today, a magazine that led the way in both its iterations. It's wonderful to be part of the celebration of IKON's valuable archive and special anniversary issue. The poems I'll read today are from 3 collections. Storm Clouds Like Unkept Promises, out earlier this year from Casa Urraca Press. Vertigo of Risk, forthcoming from the same publisher in February. And Home, the manuscript I'm working on currently. This first poem is called Dubious Gifts, and it's for Leandro Katz. Animal noises live within us, even as Disney replaces them with voiceover cackles, erasing nature's memory, playing for an audience of millions. Our sons and brothers come with the dubious gift of want, translated ritualistically as need or demand. We try to help them see the danger, even as they force entry in our flesh. And we, so often called the weaker sex, are also born owing a debt that can't be paid except by traveling obstacle courses strewn with body parts in the rain-soaked earth of killing fields. We used to believe in us and them, a concept we applied to trust, the art of bullying or the win we accrue by stealing another's water, tilling another's field, defining sex or gender by traditional binary rules puts freedom off limits or confines it to a zoo where the mother lion sings a story of vast savanna to its bewildered young. In our youth, we thought we could subvert those strictures by ingesting entheogens, Mexican mushroom, bitter peyote button or drink. We were left with the film strip flapping on a projector, crowing to the void. With age, we harness memory to perform the whole script in lives where poetry is our language, landscape, our imagination, and justice, the only rule we care to keep. This one is called Not Even the Cheetah. This race to say it all before the finish line heats up, and I worry there's no more time for words, the poem you hear before I open my mouth. Half tortoise, but not half hare, maybe cheetah, the fastest animal. At times I outrace myself, and at others notice everything in my path. I must choose between two cadences, two directions, an option that wedges itself between my left cheek and shoulder, like a violin that asks to be played by the virtuoso who hides her panic attacks beneath her pillow at night. Not a matter of dueling personalities, hesitation, or days when everything breaks. Mine is a curious arc. I want to say it all before my journey fizzles and breathes its last. But if I can't, no one will know, not even the cheetah. Words in the funhouse mirror. The word memory entered my vocabulary disguised as a bridge. When bare feet ran across it, the broken slats beneath their weight separated slightly, and I could see a river, its ferocious rapids churning below. When the word memory came into my life, disguise had lost its allure. I still had to cross that bridge. I didn't look down, but only straight ahead until I was safely on the other side. What we read in books or hear on the lips of others never prepares us for those life experiences that threaten to change our shape and temperature, sometimes even giving us a brand new name. The word forgive holds no interest for me. I prefer the word judge, of ill repute and shunned by many, but useful when rocket blasts scar the horizon and crops are ready for harvest. Non-negotiable. My home is a cavern of heartbeats, scaling its innermost walls like a rock climber, placing his toes in ancient cracks. My home is an ocean of slave ships and shipwrecks, but also dolphins and whales riding the waves. My home is rich in questions, forged by the wonder of each generation as it takes its place at the table. My home considers need to know when it talks to me, teaching me patience and resilience. My home says shame is the only thing it will not allow to pass its threshold. Non-negotiable, it says, and folds its arms. And I'm going to end with this poem called Waiting Our Turn. Lawrence, he of Lady Chatterley, said the way to eat a fig was open it until it becomes a glittery, rosy, moist, honeyed, four-petaled flower. Then, after raping the blossom, hold it in your mouth, lick the crack and devour the flesh in a single bite. Every fruit has its secret, said the poet women loved, then turned us into luscious fruits to be peeled by hungry lips and spit out. Neruda, He of communist solidarity wrote of women's bodies as white hills and white thighs promised to forge us as weapons, arrow to bone, stone in its sling, so he could outlive himself. This poem is my reply. Neither seductive fruit to be savored and discarded, nor white in a world of brown, and never, ever weaponized. We sharpen our tongues, imagine our revenge, and wait our turn. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. And let's see. Thanks. And everything has been so powerful today. So thank you everybody for reading. And I'm so glad we're recording this as well. I'm also putting the links in the chat. If you don't have your chat open yet, you can go in there and see what's going on. And I'll also email out the links with the links to the archive and to the new IKON online issue is in there. And I'll be reposting them several times. So now I want to bring up Susan. And Susan Sherman she's a poet and a playwright and an essayist, and she's founding editor of IKON magazine, and she's joining us from New York City. So thank you, Susan. And let's see, you're on mute. So.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
I'll
Okay.
start again. I just want to thank everybody. What a wonderful reading. Thank you so much for participating. I'm really very moved, and I'm going to start with a poem that starts in winter. This is a poem for people without a history, whatever their color, whatever their race, who can't remember their mother ever holding them, talking to them about their past, who find themselves in unknown places, without instructions and without a guide. This is a poem for the children of immigrants whose parents wanted so much to forget, to leave behind the places they were born, the places they fled. They never spoke of those days to their children, never even told them their grandparents' names, who died living their children lost and restless, rootless, hungry. This is a poem that starts in winter but never ends, a poem about people, about individuals with specific features, proper names. This is a poem for Sarah, whose mother was Jewish, but no one could tell. She had blonde hair, blue eyes. It was 1939. She taught Sarah a lesson about vision, how to make people see past you, how to hide. In moments of doubt, they would always throw it in your face. You could count on it. Dirty Jew. This is a poem about words. This is a poem about Sarah's mother, who never stepped inside a synagogue after the age of 8, who never forgave her own parents for what she was born, an immigrant, poor, who lived her contradictions until the day she died, who left her lie behind her, a legacy drawn in her daughter's face. This is a poem for Sarah's mother, a poem about words. This is a poem for Barbara, 1961, whose father warned her if she was involved with those radicals at Berkeley, those Reds, he would be the first to give her name to the FBI, to turn her in. She never doubted he was serious. She learned that day never to trust and never to speak. This is a poem about trust. This is a poem for Carol, who cried out in shame, discovering her ancestors had killed and robbed to gain a country. Carol, who had a history she no longer wished to claim. This is a poem for a Vietnamese poet, Havana, 1969, who praised 3 young Americans for their courage, standing against their own country, their own people, for what they felt right. He had no choice, was forced to fight, no virtue in that. They thought him too generous, mistaken at best, but still it helped, but still it healed. It was winter then, too. This is a poem about digging images from rage when all else fails, when there is no common past, and anger embedded so deeply it survives. This is a poem about war. This is a poem for Brenda, who fell in love with a woman years before it became a political act, who decades later still stumbles over words long forbidden, jealous of those who proclaim their love nonchalantly, lesbian. This is a poem for Brenda. This is a poem about words, a poem about winter, a poem about war. This is a poem for those caught between worlds, squeezed between times, for people without a history who connect with no ancestral past. This is a poem about them, about me. This is a poem about words like dialogue, compassion, which have yet to appear, but people, this poem, about war, contradiction, rage, choice, anger, trust. This is a poem that starts in winter, but never ends. This is a poem about people, individuals with specific features, proper names. Okay. The next poem is a love poem. A love poem. There was a woman once who was more to me than words, any blending of alphabet and sound. We met at the corners of day in the space where night crosses light, where shadows fold into darkness. The moments between our meetings were air. 40 years lie between her and this poem, a length of time impossible to render. There was a woman once who was more to me than imagination, wonder, the chimeras that embraced the night, more than the chill kiss of wind that tortured her secret into patterns of light and breeze. A woman who was more to me than forever, the bending of syllable and time. We met on a hilltop in Vermont, made love in the sweet grass of our desire. These are moments that defy forgetting. These are moments time cannot cure with detail, noise, distraction, mornings that bound us sticky and tight with dew. There was a woman once who was more to me than flesh. We touched to open and then once again to close, the way a negative is held over wary eyes to keep the sun from blinding in the madness of its fire. What lay between us was that strong, what joined us was that fierce, lying in each other's arms. Married, she had never meant for us to happen, had seen me as diversion, a momentary lapse. Now she called me treasure, promised to keep me always cherished, hidden in her private place, but forever is a length of time like any other. One afternoon, precisely at the stroke of one, she lapsed into a silence without boundary. The air lay like a tomb around us. She could not look at me, touch me, say my name. She had never meant it to go so far. It had become too much for her to bear, this woman who meant more to me than words. Should I be grateful? Thank whatever gods or goddesses gifted me this passion, this legacy I cannot relinquish, cast aside. Forever is a length of time without forgiveness. After 40 years, I search for her no longer, but for that moment between opening and distance when I held her close, not yet knowing enough to turn away. We talk so much about borders now, and this is a poem I wrote a while ago called Border Guards. Border guards. There are lines drawn in the sand that must never be crossed. So say the pundits, the arbiters of boundaries, definitions of what should or should not be said or done. There are lines drawn on maps around cities, boroughs, neighborhoods, blocks, houses, the people who live in them. There are lines drawn around nations, lines teeming with people waiting to get in or out. There are lines drawn around individuals, ethnic, racial, tribal lines, around genders, he, she, you, me, they, them, a demarcation of countries, cultures, continents. There are lines drawn around hemispheres, north, south, east, west, around the earth itself. There are longitude lines, latitude lines. The Tropic of Capricorn is a line, the Tropic of Cancer. The earth as it circles space as we delineate the seasons. A child takes a crayon, weighs it carefully in her palm. It is yellow, the color of the sun or of her dreams, places she sees in the picture she sums through at night, her fingers scrolling color across paper, purple, then blue and ocean, then fire, blazing orange and subtle green, flowers, trees, objects without set form. Only she knows what they mean. Lines of memory are like that, vivid, weightless, ghost images without boundary. Cézanne, seeing a forest of trees come into being in the dawning sun, paints them obsessively, branches, leaves undulating out of birthing light as they come alive in front of his discerning eyes. All this is not to say we do not need to name things, identify them ourselves. But where exactly are these boundaries, borders, guarded so carefully with passports, rules, and laws? I can't see them. Can you? These lines that label us, define us, separate us, these lines that must never be crossed. This is a little bit lighter. I love cosmology and globes and the earth. And one thing that always kind of astounded me is if you think of the earth, it's, you know, it's an ovoid sphere, they say. It's round. But if you think of people standing on the earth, some of us are standing straight up, some are upside down, some are sideways, depending where on space you're looking at the earth if you were in outer space. The other thing is that when a rocket gets shot up into space, it's not the propulsion that takes you through space. The propulsion is to get by gravity, to escape gravity. From then on, you're falling. So those rocket ships are actually falling into space. So this is called every which way. Imagine a globe spinning through space. You are standing in Canada. The stars are singularly bright. You watch them in silence. You are standing in China. Bikers struggle through crowded streets. Pollution so dense it obscures the light. You are standing in Spain. It is summer. The sun burns your flesh as you reach toward your daughter's hand. You are standing in Africa. The Serengeti is quiet. Predators wait for night. You are standing in Antarctica, the sky dimming in preparation for winter's long sleep. You are standing at the North Pole or in a big city, Calcutta perhaps, or Moscow, Buenos Aires, New York. You are standing in the suburbs, on the plains, on an island. Do you ever think it curious, no matter where you are, freed of gravity, you will fall into space? Perhaps even now you slant at a 90-degree angle, or worse, with your head hanging permanently down. How athletic to be stretched out sideways, rigid as a board. What determination to remain the wrong way round, the soles of your feet where your head should be. Have you ever considered how distorted our perception of who we are, how we are placed might be, when we are, all of us, standing every which way but up? And I'm going to end the reading with one of my very favorite poems. It's called First and Last Poems for Violetta Parra, who is one of my, I mean, it's just one of my great inspirations. I was in Chile in the early 70s when Allende was in power. And I wrote this poem when I came home years later. Some of the references are to things about Chile, like copper. They mine a lot of copper there, the smell of wine. The only little note is when I say your mountains like my own, like home, I'm talking about California, where I grew up, not New York City. First and last poems for Violetta Parra. There is nothing romantic about death, about pain. Tears falling like soft clouds, like copper clouds, the color of rusted blood, the texture of fire. The first enemy is fear, the second power, the third old age. All my life, all those books, all those feelings, words, thoughts, experiences, to say such simple words, to feel such simple things. Your mountains like my own, like home, rows of dust of light brown soil, as if a gentle wind could level them, could blow them away. The sea touching my nostrils, filling them, a country of smell, of sound, of wine, flowers, of salt air, of early morning, opening and opening through my mind, my heart, the extremities of my hands, my feet. If I were a bird and could float, dipping and weaving tapestries of air and light, if we could fly together like silver crows, birds of dream, until everything stops, is silent and gentle, like your songs, your voice. But the world allows us nothing. The world is nerves, is fiber, dust and sand. The world changes constantly. Nothing remains the same. I see you singing into the air as if your voice could fly, be free. Were there creatures above you listening, fishing your gifts from the breeze? Was there a place that could hold you as you opened yourself to it, as you went where no one else could follow, where no one else could see? Each time I have left part of myself behind. Until now, I am mostly memory, mostly dream. What I have left, I give to you. My last love, my last song, the total of all I have ever felt or known. We grow smaller as we grow, as things empty themselves of us and we of them. It is so deep, this thing between us, no name can contain it. Even time trembles at its touch. So, in ending, I again want to thank everybody, Jules, Margaret, Mary, Demetria, and encourage you now to stay and ask questions if you have them. And I turn it back again to Jules. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Susan, and thanks, everybody, and Demetria and Mary and Margaret. First of all, if you want to unmute, we can give some applause, because I just think that this
It's
the
wonderful.
reading is just wonderful. So I know on Zoom you don't know, which is truthful. That was wonderful, everybody. So, look, and I did post the links in the chat, so make sure you open your chat. I'll post them again before we end the meeting. And if you click the little three dots, you can save your chat. If you're in here, you're going to get the email too with that. So, but Susan, I just wanted to maybe start the Q&A. I guess if you have a question, put it in the chat and we'll go over it, and I can bring the rest of the readers up here too if we want. But I guess, Susan, talk a little bit about just IKON, for those that might not know some of the history. I know you've written about a lot of it, but I just think it's so great that this is now archived. So can you talk a little bit about how that came to be, how the archive?
Well, actually, Demetria was very much responsible for having the archive put online. She knows the people at World Lit Today, and they, what do you call? They scanned in the magazines. So this is just the second series. I hope someday somebody puts up the first series, and made PDF files. And if you go into the archive, you can access each issue of the magazine. There's also a long history of IKON, including part of the history of the first series. So it's 30 pages, which I'm certainly not going to have you endure right now. But IKON, we started originally, there were 4 of us that started it in the 1960s, and the idea originally, to make it very short, was we were sick of people saying that artists and writers couldn't be socially involved, right? Socially active. It was either politics or art. That was one. And 2, that you had to have a critic interpret your work. I mean, it's fine if people want to interpret your work and talk about it, but you don't have to have somebody interpret your work. A friend can talk about it. You can talk about it yourself. We do have, something here that we can use. And for sure, critics shouldn't be able to arbitrate what art is. I mean, that was really the main thing, which I think came up again with postmodernism, but I won't go into that now. So it started and became much more political after I went to the Cuban Cultural Congress, which is where Margaret and I really got to know each other. There's a long story about how the magazine stopped. Suddenly, when I got back from the Cultural Congress, the distribution of the magazine disappeared. But you will read all about that in the history. So that was the end of it in 1969. And in 1985, I got a little seed money. My stepfather died, and he left me a little bit of money, $5,000. And I knew I wasn't going to be able someday to retire on it. And I wanted to do the magazine again. So I started IKON again, but as a feminist series. And I think that I'm going to really finish now, but to make it, because you can look online and see these wonderful poets who are in it, poets, painters, filmmakers. I mean, it's really a history. And everything is extremely relevant and extremely fresh today. But the whole idea is, I think, if you read Yearning by Bell Hooks, she talks about revolutionary aesthetics should be something that's expansive, that expands, that's inclusive, not exclusive, that doesn't separate people, that can be an activity of social change that brings people together and is constantly expanding and including. And that's really the way we saw IKON. We did 3 specific issues that were anthologies, although the magazine itself is an anthology each issue. There was a Art Against Apartheid issue, which was a wonderful issue. We collaborated with groups, Asian Women United we did an issue with, and we did an issue with Coast to Coast, the National Women of Color artists. So all of that is there.
Yeah, which is wonderful. So the archive link, you can click on each individual issue and see the full issue. And especially for some, the younger generations too, it gives a sense of that history to actually see the magazines. Demetria, and I know you and Susan co-edited this new IKON magazine that's up as well. So that's for that.
Yeah, it was really wonderful. We were able to bring in more writers, poets, prose. It just, very much in the spirit of the original IKON.
Well, wonderful.
Just to mention, it's only online. It's not printed as an issue.
Right.
It's just online.
Right. Yeah, so I invite everybody to look at those and to, and well, most of us know that, but it's growing. If you didn't grow up with before the internet, that was a lot of work to get things out and published and on the newsstands and distributed and everything else too. So, and now we have our own ways of, it's almost with self-publishing and social media. To me, it seems like there's an abundance of information on how do you sort through a lot of that. So this is a great addition. And yes, in the comment, one of the links, there's the archive link, and then there's also the new issue of IKON magazine. So that has new poems, some of the poems that you've heard today, as well as others from people that aren't here. So, well, I just want to thank everybody, Susan Sherman for letting me know about this, Demetria, Margaret Randall, Mary Oishi. I'm going to stop the recording, but we will, I'll look forward to the next readings and keeping in touch that way too.
Thank you, Jules.
Wow.